My name is Cody York. This is my informative speech for Miss Dealey's public speaking class, Northern Kentucky University. Alright, wave everybody. None of you are related to me, right?
No.
Don't lie. You can't be related. This is my second speech for Northern Kentucky University, my informative speech over the history of heavy metal. Imagine being in a crowded room, shoulder to shoulder with a bunch of sweaty people that you've never laid eyes on before in your life. You're all there, you're all an arm's length of each other, you're rubbing up against the person next to you in a way that would be considered harassment in several circles, but you're all there for the same purpose, to scream your heart out, headbang and thrash around to an extremely emotional style of music that has been around for years. Metal music has origins in blues and psychedelic rock, but it has taken those ideas to the nth degree, forming a distinct style that has changed much over the years since its inception, rising from obscurity into the spotlight alongside such other mainstream genres like pop and hip-hop. I've been a fan of this genre of music for about 8 years or so. I was raised on classic rock and then moved on to harder rock when I got into my teens. From there, my obsession slowly evolved into what it is today. It is a topic that I can talk about for hours, and I believe that the variety and intricacies in the metal movement overshadow anything found in other genres. I will tell you some little-known history about some bands that are classified as classic rock, who were actually the people that jump-started the music that most people consider metal today. I will show you how the style has adapted and changed along with the world from its roots. Let's start off by looking at metal's origins, which aren't strictly from Metallica like a lot of people think. The main characteristics of music that define metal are widely varied, but most metal artists have several things in common. Heavily distorted guitars, a harsh vocal style ranging from high pitch to a low thunderous growl, and an overall loudness wall of sound effect that is unmatched by other genres. Lyrical themes are generally dark, and they incorporate a lot of fantasy elements and use imagery such as those found in Lord of the Rings. The guitar has always been one of the central elements to metal music. Now, the origins of the actual term heavy metal are disputed by many historians. Some say its first mention was in Steppenwolf's smash hit song Born to Be Wild, where the lyric heavy metal thunder is uttered. Some say the first metal album is Iron Butterfly's Inagata Davida. Some even say that the origins go as far back as the Beatles, when in the late 1960s they released the White Album, including the song Helter Skelter, which to date was the heaviest sounding release by a popular recording artist. Nearly all can agree on one aspect though. Led Zeppelin was the first band to emerge that truly defined the genre and embodied all of its characteristics. Consisting of founding members Jimmy Page, Robert Plant, John Bonham, and John Paul Jones, Zeppelin's style of music had a lot of pieces that were unheard of for the time period, namely Page's extremely distorted style of guitar playing and Plant's high-pitched wailing vocals. Now, the band's actual style was very diverse, and they incorporated a lot of different elements and drew from a lot of different sources. Stephen Thomas Erlewine said in his AllMusic.com biography of the band that they were the definitive heavy metal band. It wasn't just their crushingly loud interpretation of blues, it was how they incorporated mythology and mysticism and a variety of other genres into their sound. The 70s saw a prominent rise in a lot of popular heavy metal musicians, with such bands as Black Sabbath, Blue Oyster Cult, and Kiss making their mark on the emerging scene. This is also where the genre first started being rejected by the mainstream. Many critics of the time felt that metal music lacked heartfelt emotion into their lyrics. They thought it was all about showmanship. But now the 80s continued the success of heavy metal, as it moved even further into the spotlight. Heavyweights of the 70s were upstaged and usurped by a different sounding form of metal that started to emerge, glam metal. This style of music is still very popular today and is played on all the classic rock stations all over the world. It included a much more heavy focus on speedy guitar solos and anthemic choruses and had a greater pop sensibility. Bands influential to this movement, such as Cinderella, Motley Crue, and Twisted Sister, stole the scene away. Now, glam metal is also referred to as hair metal sometimes because a lot of the members had some pretty crazy, outlandish hairstyles. It became a major driving force in the music spectrum and garnered higher positions on the chart, increasing ticket sales, and a solid presence on the American touring circuit. Robert Walser, an American musicologist, said in his 1993 book, Running with the Devil, that between 83 and 84, heavy metal went from an 8% to a 20% increase of all recordings sold in the US. Not to be outdone, Europe had its own contributions to make to the scene. The movement from across the pond came to be known as the new wave of British heavy metal, and it was characterized by a step away from the blues elements and a tougher, faster tempo than before. Motorhead, Judas Priest, and Iron Maiden were some of the bands responsible for this movement. The 1980s was a definitive decade for metal music as a whole, because the underground, less commercial style started to evolve as a counter to the overproduced arena rock that was prevalent at the time. People were tiring of the commercialism associated with glam metal, and as a result, one of the most important and influential subgenres of metal emerged: thrash metal. All you need to mention about the influence of thrash metal is 4 bands: Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, and Anthrax, all of who enjoyed top 40 records in the 1980s. Now this next part is where it gets a little crazy, and there simply isn't enough time to highlight all the different styles that started up as a result of thrash metal in the underground between the late 80s and early 90s. But thrash metal was directly responsible for the more extreme subgenres that sprung up. These include death metal, which is the heaviest form and characterized by extremely low guttural vocals and fast percussion, and black metal, a style involving many symphonic elements and a focus on pagan dark lyrics, and power metal, a rejection of the comparative darkness found in black and death, and an emphasis on upbeat, epic instrumentation and clean singing vocals. Many more genres have evolved as well. While the underground was alive and thriving, by the time the early 90s rolled around, mainstream metal was considered dead. This was largely due to the popularity of grunge music, as the public lost interest in metal's showmanship and mellowed out a little bit. However, certain bands such as Pantera and White Zombie enjoyed success, involving on the elements shown in thrash metal, but with more of a groove to it and a slower tempo overall. The biggest contribution the 90s made to metal was the nu metal movement. And much like when metal first emerged in the 70s, it included a wide range of influences. Bands such as Korn, Limp Bizkit, and Linkin Park added many electronic elements, and some even paid tribute to hip-hop by adding a DJ or rapping their vocals. According to Ian Christie's 2003 book, Sound of the Beast, A Complete Headbanging History of Metal, this mix-up of genres demonstrated that pan-cultural metal could really pay off. These bands enjoyed great commercial success, largely due to the part that their music videos were in heavy rotation on MTV. Now, at the turn of the millennium, metal experienced another resurgence akin to what had happened in the 80s. This can be attributed almost exclusively to the rise and popularity of social networking sites such as MySpace and Pure Volume. Bands could come from the middle of nowhere and upload their own recordings, post them all over the web for free, and build a fan base from the ground up. Now, one other subgenre that must be mentioned when talking about the 2000s is metalcore. It's a style that combines the speed and harshness of thrash metal with an emphasis on the groove and mentality of hardcore, which is a style that derived from punk. It remained a largely underground phenomenon, much like thrash, in the late 90s and into the early 2000s. But bands such as Killswitch Engage, Unearth, and Atreyu helped boost the genre's popularity. A big reason why metalcore is much more accessible than other more extreme versions of metal is that there's a lot more emphasis on melody. Many choruses are sung instead of screamed, and the instruments don't stay at a constant blistering speed. On February 9th, 2007, a milestone happened in terms of metal's exposure. Lamb of God, a band combining elements of thrash metal, death metal, and metalcore, played a set on Late Night with Conan O'Brien. It is worth noting because previously no band quite as heavy as Lamb of God had appeared on national TV. Their drummer, Chris Adler, was quoted in a blabbermouth.net article as saying, "It's exciting to think that national television has come far enough in our direction to actually let a metal band like us on the air. We are very excited for the opportunity not only for ourselves, but for the doors it will help to break down for heavy metal music in general." Their performance signified that the heavier, more extreme side of metal was finally gaining some mainstream acceptance. Needless to say, you can tell that metal has evolved much over the years. What started as an offshoot of the blues has exploded into a genre with more subcategories than virtually any other. Many attempts have been made to map this complex world, most notably by the editors of AllMusic.com. But it certainly is an ongoing process, and like any genre of music, it continues to evolve and incorporate new elements. One of the things that has always impressed me the most about metal music is its ability to meld seamlessly with any other form. You can take pop, hip-hop, reggae, country, punk, or whatever, and mix it with metal and make a completely new sound. I like to compare metal music to white paint. No matter what color you mix it with, it will create a new shade all its own. Metal has enjoyed varying degrees of popularity throughout the years, but in one form or another, it has always identified with the wilder, more intense side that we have in all of us. When you attend a metal concert, the atmosphere is unlike anything from another genre of music, and the passion shown by metal fans the world over has allowed it to remain relevant ever since the first few notes of Stairway to Heaven captivated listeners so many years ago. As a fan and as someone who appreciates passion in music, I hope that future generations will be introduced and become fans as well. No matter what style of music you're into, chances are there is a metal band out there that incorporates some kind of aspects into their music. Give them a chance sometime, because underneath that gruff, loud exterior, there is a life to this music, and it really does bring people together. Now, for my visual aid, I have a lot of old records that I have dug out from my mother's basement. She had very, very many records from the 70s. I'll pass some of them out to let you see. I have some Black Sabbath records, some Iron Butterfly. I have about 4 Led Zeppelin records. And this is just kind of so you can see how music was done back in the day. I think there's just enough for everyone. These are all in original condition too, by the way.